Monster Hunter Wilds will be easier than World and Rise, and that's okay. Let's discuss why. Because if I have to go through another game cycle of Monster Hunter players saying things like, "Is this game too easy? I've been breezing through low rank, did they casualize the series?" It's going to drive me crazy. Wait. Stop typing and hear me out. Monster Hunter Wilds will be easier, and it is not hard to tell why given the way Monster Hunter games have worked in the past. First, let's go over the obvious reason. Seasoned players, sit tight. We still have some newcomers that need this reminder. Wilds is just a base game experience. There will only be low rank and high rank. Not to mention there will be no title update monsters meant to really push the difficulty and challenge the most dedicated players. No arch-tempered elder dragons, no behemoth, no apex monsters, and no event quests with beefed up one-shot machines. If you are familiar with these games, this is not a surprise to you. Even the old gen vets remember the event quests that would come out after launch that would make the monsters deal much higher damage than their regular fights. If you old gen vets want to drop some horror stories in the comments for new gen players, as well as newcomers, please let them know what it was like. Satisfying challenge is a positive point in the series. Torturous, ball-crushing difficulty is not the point of the series. Every Monster Hunter game is foundationally built to be picked up as a starting point, even the old generation games. It is why even if you have mastered the hardest challenges of one game, you will still start at the beginning with all of the tiny baby challenges and low rank for the next game. You might be misinformed if you think that anything in low rank or high rank for a new generation base game Monster Hunter will be as challenging as an expansion pinnacle challenge like Fatalis or Primordial Malzeno. These games are about the journey. You start with nothing but some standard issue gear and a need for violence against every giant creature that is unfortunate enough to cross your path. You work your way up from the bottom of the food chain. You face off with the low tier raptors and move on to bears, to dinosaurs, to speedy panther demons, to kings of the land and sky, to ecosystem destroyers, to cataclysmic threats. If it was just about the pinnacle challenges, we wouldn't have rosters of 70 plus different types of monsters in these games, with only 3 to 5 at a time, providing a more consistently harder challenge for the entire community. These monsters have unique personalities, behaviors, and aesthetics. They are not just next boss, next boss, next boss, next boss. You are meant to experience and have fun with them. This is the joy of being a long-time fan. You can take comfort in that if you are rusty or trying a new weapon, you can build up from a more lax part of the game. The monsters start off much slower. They tend to do a lot less damage compared to end-game challenges. You can just focus on marveling over these fantastically designed creatures. If you are a newcomer, you get to dive into these admittedly complex games and learn as you go. There is no shame in struggling while you learn. Different weapons offer different playstyles, which leads to wildly different experiences across the player base. You might feel like you are going nowhere while you are trying to find a weapon that works the way your brain works. There is also a development of good habits and overall knowledge base. It takes time to learn if you should care about defense and upgrading your armor parts. It takes time to make builds. It takes time to learn to not panic in front of the monsters to manage your health and stamina properly. It takes time to pick up small but extremely important tips that become natural instinct over time as you play. Here are a few examples. Moving to the left and right will help you avoid attacks pretty often, especially since you can use your roll to position yourself out of the attack altogether. This is a big one for fans of Souls-likes who hop into the series thinking that they are similar, since most of us are accustomed to longer rolls with a lot of iframes. This is not how Monster Hunter's rolls work. Another tip is after you get hit, staying down offers iframes while you are lying. This is big for combo heavy monsters, and it really takes the pressure off once you learn to utilize this properly. These are things deeply ingrained in seasoned players, and they seem small, but they make a world of difference. These are things hammered into you as you play, and as you play, the difficulty continues to dial up in a slow and steady manner. The monsters get faster, they hit harder, they become more complex. You may get stopped by a monster that fights in a way that you struggle with. but if you overcome it and push forward, you may breeze by afterwards because of what you learned. At some point, you'll be able to go back, and the monsters that once felt insurmountable all of a sudden feel like they are moving in slow motion. Talent does play a role, but really learning how to play the game will take you even further than that. There is a saying that goes around periodically in the community that states that the hardest Monster Hunter game is the one you play first. This is mostly true when it comes to Monster Hunter. I would say that this is most applicable only to the point where you have truly adapted to the style of game Monster Hunter is. Someone starting in World or Rise may struggle at the beginning of their respective games, but they may have differing opinions on what is more difficult in the later game challenges after playing both games. A World player could conquer Arch-Tempered Velkhana in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and then feel like they are getting their booty cheeks beaten like Belgian bongos by Raisin Crimson Glow Valstrax and Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, or vice versa. I'm saying all of this because despite the premise of this video being that Wilds will be easier, as it is not going to have the most challenging content from the get-go, you newcomers are not off the hook. Every game has their horror stories of scary challenges that commonly plague newcomers as they learn the game. Wilds will be no different. Moving forward, Monster Hunter World, Rise, and judging by what we saw in the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, will all have similar design philosophies and quirks. Every Monster Hunter before World had a similar gameplay loop to these new-gen games, but there are some changes that are so foundationally game-changing that it is almost an entirely new experience altogether. Old generation games had the monsters moving pretty much as quickly as the new generation games, but your player character was far slower, stamina was consumed faster, rolls weren't able to be spammed as safely, consuming items took longer and left you stationary, and you were unable to restock healing items in the middle of hunts. These were intentional design choices to keep the player character slow and methodical. Every action and every item counted. That being said, moving from new-gen Monster Hunter to old-gen pretty much makes you relearn from the ground up all over again. So it is very possible that your hardest times in Monster Hunter as far as growing and learning goes can be simultaneously a newer game and an older game should you choose to play one. So with that explained, understand that I am mostly going to be talking about these next Wilds details with a mindset that is focused mostly on comparing it to Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise for this next section. Aside from the obvious lack of Master Rank, title update monsters, and events at launch, I do have some other things to point out. These have to do with the weapon mechanics and player power altogether. With Rise's inclusion, people were concerned that things like Wirefall, Wirebug super moves, and counters would trivialize the game. Some people make arguments that it did, and that is why they had to go absolutely nuts in the expansion with monsters that could Tekken combo you to death to compensate for the newfound player power. We will not be breaking down Rise and Sunbreak's mechanics today, but I wanted to bring some attention to how Monster Hunter Wilds takes all of these concerns a step further. In Wilds, your new bird friend can pick you up after you get hit, so you can effectively get hit, continue laying down for the iframes, and then be picked up by the Sacred to be taken to a safe distance. Wirefall accomplished a similar thing in that it was able to grant you distance and it automatically sheathed your weapon. The difference is that the Sacred is able to auto-dodge a few times, while you can be hit out of Wirefall. So the one check Wirefall had, other than being tied to a cooldown, is basically gone with the Sacred pickup. The Sacred is also so fast that you can maintain distance easily, and you can even heal and sharpen your weapon on top of it. Let's also discuss the fact that in the beta we were able to experience every weapon to a great degree. During this period, we see that most weapons now have some form of counter, improved guard, or contrary to the popular longsword haters' belief, hyper armor on impactful attacks. All of these are traits that were present in a lot of Wirebug skills, but with Wirebug skills, you had to maintain cooldowns, and if you were without Wirebug and you were hit by a pin move of some kind, you would often be destroyed since you could not Wirefall out to avoid the strike, so there was some actual need to think at times for this mechanic. Finally, some of the weapons were touched up to include some easier play. To name some examples, Dual Blade's Demon Dance can now be cancelled, instead of leaving you vulnerable, and this is already after you get hyper armor on the startup. Also, it seems that Demon Mode doesn't consume stamina that fast anymore, Hammer gets what was once a wirebug skill to grant it great mobility and keep its charge level instead of having to roll and lose the charge. To be fair, at least it doesn't have iframes, so we can excuse no cooldown. Bow gets a counter dodge that refills stamina all the way and grants some good distance. It also gets homing arrows, so you only have to periodically hit a single impactfully aimed shot as opposed to having to aim and maintain distance the entire hunt. Greatsword is now able to rotate while charging, which is already nutty by itself, but paired with the ability to keep your charge and go up a charge level for successfully tackling through an attack just makes for the ability to play a reactionary and easy to use style for what was traditionally one of the hardest melee weapons to use in a reactionary manner without extensive fight knowledge. I believe that Monster Hunter Wilds will of course come out of the box easier. I believe that with a lot of these player power changes, it will definitely make a lot of aspects of the game easier compared to even the other new gen titles. But people said similar things about World when the jump from old gen to new gen happened, and they were right. But that did not stop them from getting slapped around by the likes of Arch-Tempered Nergigante, Extreme Behemoth, Alatreon, and Fatalis. Similar things were said about Rise, and that did not stop people from getting slapped around by Advanced Apex Zinogre, Hazard Primordial Malzeno, Hazard Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax, and Hazard Risen Shagaru Magala. Regardless, I do like a lot of the changes Wilds is rolling out with. And if you like this style of video, let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support my channel. It really does help a lot. Please, share your thoughts, but do keep the discussion civil. Stay meaty, my friends.
I've got dinner ready. Let him